Hey YouTube, Earl of Pipes here. Today we're going to be reviewing a pipe tobacco from Cornell and Deal. So let's get to it. Cornell and Deal's Espresso. Alright, so there's a little bit of a story here behind this, and I'll keep it brief. Many of you may be subscribers to Road Glide Sully's channel, and if you aren't, I highly recommend it because the man does lots of experiments with tobaccos. They're really fun to watch, but one of the things that he's doing is he's in search of vintage or old tobaccos that have been packaged decades ago that his grandfather might have smoked. And particularly the whole pursuit is to find some sort of kind of pipe connection to his grandfather, to maybe smoke some of the same things that he smoked. And so that got me to pondering about my smoking ancestors. My grandfather, as best as I can remember, didn't really smoke a pipe. He did smoke cigarettes and Swisher Sweets. I have no desire to smoke either of those. But my great-grandfather, my dad's grandfather, he smoked a pipe. And every time I smoke a pipe, my dad talks about his grandfather. And so my great-grandfather, he immigrated to the United States at an early age, very young. I think he was under 4 or 5, but he was born in Sicily in the 1880s, and he and his parents migrated. They eventually ended up settling in New Orleans, and he became an attorney in New Orleans. And so if you watched my last video and you heard me describe my family of my grandfather being a doctor, his father being a doctor, and his father before him being a doctor, and then he had 6 boys. 5 of those boys became doctors, and one of them, my dad, became the lawyer in the family. This is where the lawyering side comes in. It's all from my great-grandfather. He actually used to take my dad. I never knew my great-grandfather, but he would take my dad when he was young, like 4 or 5 years old, and he'd put him on his knee, and he would tell him, "Now you're going to be my lawyer, and here are the rules of evidence." And he indoctrinated him at a young age on how to be a good lawyer. Anyway, so with that, I think there's something sparked in all of us to be connected to something bigger than ourselves, and one of the ways I think that manifests itself, at least with me, is to find connection to family, to find connection to our ancestors. So where am I going with this, and how does Cornell and Deal's Espresso blend play into that? Cornell and Deal's Espresso blend, as it's kind of makes sense, it's a coffee-based blend. Well, my great-grandfather was a practicing attorney in the Great Depression in New Orleans. And he, like most other people during that time period, were pretty hard up for maybe even some of the basic necessities of life. And so after he would have his morning coffee during the Great Depression, he would take his coffee grinds out and he would dry them out on his counter, and later that day, once they were dry, he would put them in his pipe and he would smoke them, because he didn't have access to tobacco, so he would smoke his coffee beans. And so that's one thing that kind of strikes out to me, is so much of what we do as pipe smokers is probably more about routine than it is about the tobacco itself. I can't imagine that smoking coffee beans was incredibly enjoyable, nor do I think that it was because he was addicted to nicotine, because coffee doesn't have any nicotine that I'm aware of. I know it's got caffeine and it can be a stimulant, but it is it's more about routine than it is about anything else. So given that Road Glide Sully was trying to find a connection, and that spurred me to think about my connection to my great-grandfather, I was starting to think about, well, maybe I'll get the tobacco he smoked, Granger, and I plan on doing that at some point. But as I was doing my aromatic search, and I've talked about that a couple times on this channel for newbies, this popped up on smokingpipes.com, and I said, you know what? Let me try it. This is the closest I'm going to get to smoking coffee in a pipe. And so that's how I ended up ordering this blend. But let's get to kind of the information on this blend. Let's actually get into the review of this blend. So it is it's a coarse ribbon cut blend. And one of the things that you need to know when you dig into the bag, and hopefully I'll show you some video of this and what it looks like, but it's really oily and goopy. So I think if I were going to be using Bradley from Stuffing Things gauge on how oily and wet it is, it's drowned rat, because I think that's as high as it can go. But when you get your little bag, it is very wet. It's you might could dry it out over the course of several hours. I haven't had the patience to do that. But and I say oily because it feels like it's beyond just regular water or moisture. There's something else in there. But the pouch note is lovely. My wife describes it as chocolate covered raisins because, of course, every tobacco smells like raisins, and since this one has coffee and a cream added on top of it, it's got to smell like chocolate covered raisins. But I will agree that is what I smell. Not necessarily chocolate covered raisins, but I get that underlying black Cavendish smell, and I get kind of this coffee and cream mixture that comes across as very chocolatey. And then because of all that excess moisture in there, it kind of gets that, I can see that raisiny, figgy smell that's present, even though I think this is all black Cavendish, just very goopy. When you light the tobacco up, and let's see if I can do it, and see if you can hear it. I am at the bottom of the bowl, and so you probably didn't hear it for that reason. But when you light it up, you can hear the water, the moisture popping in there. So it's very humid. So you can hear it. And that's not just because I'm at the bottom of the bowl. It does it at the top of the bowl, middle of the bowl, everywhere. So you're thinking, oh gosh, this isn't going to be good. It's going to be a wet, goopy aromatic. But I'll say this. I have not gotten any tongue bite on it. It does have a lovely aroma. On the retrohale, you get those light hints of coffee and cream. They're very light. It's mostly kind of what you would expect out of a black Cavendish blend, that mild, smooth sweetness. And I get no tongue bite, none whatsoever. And it was enjoyable enough that on my bowl back into lunch today, back into work from lunch today, as I sat in my car, I sat for a couple extra minutes just to enjoy it. So long story for a short review to say, what you get in this bag is an oily, goopy aromatic. It's wet when it goes into the bowl. It actually was leaving a little bit of like grease marks on my pipe as it went in. But I had zero issues with tongue bite, and the flavor was pretty good. So this is one of those that maybe if it dried out a little bit more, it might be perfect. I don't know how that would impact the taste at all. But it's an aromatic that I oddly, going into all of what I just described to you, find really enjoyable. For that, it's the Earl of Pipes signing off. You guys have a pleasant rest of the week. Later.